You've never built anything in your life, Claire. This restaurant is everything I have. And you want to lecture me about business? That's what my younger brother screamed at me across the dinner table, 3 weeks before his restaurant was scheduled to close its doors forever. Drowning in debt he'd never once mentioned to the rest of the family. What he didn't know was that 4 years earlier, an anonymous investor had quietly wired $200,000 into his failing business account, keeping it alive through its hardest year. He never questioned where that money came from. He simply assumed the universe had finally decided to reward his hard work. He had no idea it was me. For years, my family treated me like the practical, unremarkable sister, the one who worked some boring finance job nobody bothered asking about, while my brother chased his dream and collected applause at every family gathering for his ambition. But when his restaurant landed in serious trouble one final time, and he stood there mocking me for daring to offer advice, I finally opened my laptop and showed him something he never expected to see. If you enjoy stories about family, quiet strength, and the moment the truth finally surfaces, stay with me until the very end, because what happened next changed our entire family forever. If this story moves you, please subscribe to this small channel of ours. It genuinely means so much to us. My name is Claire Bennett, and for most of my adult life, my family saw me as the responsible one, which in our house was really just a polite way of saying boring. I grew up the older of 2 children, with my younger brother Dylan 4 years behind me. From the time we were kids, Dylan was the dreamer, the one who talked about opening his own restaurant someday, who spent hours in the kitchen experimenting with recipes while our parents beamed with pride at his creativity and passion. I went a different direction entirely. I studied finance in college, then spent years building a quiet, steady career, eventually landing a position at a private investment firm downtown. Nobody in my family understood exactly what I did all day, and honestly, nobody ever asked. At every holiday dinner, the conversation always circled back to Dylan, his latest culinary idea, his big dreams, his passion for cooking that our parents constantly praised as though passion alone were something rare and precious, while my own career was mentioned in passing, if at all. "Claire's doing well with her numbers thing," my mother would say vaguely to relatives, before turning back to ask Dylan about his latest menu concept. I didn't resent Dylan for this. Not exactly. He genuinely was talented, and I loved him. But there was a quiet loneliness in constantly being the background character in my own family's story, the sensible one whose entire personality, in their eyes, began and ended with the word responsible. Dylan opened his first restaurant when he was 28, funded partially by our parents' retirement savings, a decision that worried me deeply at the time, though I kept those concerns mostly to myself. The restaurant, a cozy Italian bistro called Bella Fiore, struggled through its early years, the way most new restaurants do, but Dylan's charm and genuine talent in the kitchen slowly built a loyal following. I want to pause here for just a moment, because before I continue, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a second to subscribe to this small channel of ours. It genuinely helps more than you'd think, and I promise, there's a meaningful story waiting for you at the end of this one. Now, let's continue. By the restaurant's 4th year, Bella Fiore was facing a crisis Dylan never told our family about. A burst pipe had flooded the kitchen just before their busiest season. Insurance covered only a fraction of the damage, and Dylan found himself drowning in debt with no realistic path forward. I found out, not from Dylan directly, but through a mutual friend who mentioned, almost in passing, that Bella Fiore might be closing within months. That conversation changed everything. I spent that entire week thinking about what to do. Dylan would never accept help from me directly. That much I knew with absolute certainty. Our family dynamic had calcified years earlier into a specific shape. Dylan, the passionate creator, me, the practical sister, standing safely on the sidelines. And any attempt on my part to step into his world as an equal, let alone a financial savior, would likely be met with wounded pride rather than gratitude. So I did something I genuinely never considered before. Through my firm, I quietly structured an anonymous investment funneled through a small holding company with no connection to my name and wired $200,000 directly into Bellafiore's business account, enough to cover the kitchen repairs, settle outstanding debts, and give Dylan the breathing room he desperately needed. I never told a single person in my family what I'd done. Not my parents, not Dylan, not even my husband initially, though I eventually confided in him privately, swearing him to secrecy. Dylan, as far as I could tell, simply assumed some miracle investor had recognized his talent and decided to believe in Bellafiore's potential. He never once asked deeper questions about the source. Why would he? In his mind, brilliance like his naturally attracted opportunity. Over the following years, Bellafiore not only survived, it thrived. Dylan expanded the menu, gained recognition in local food publications, and began talking about opening a second location. At family dinners, he'd tell elaborate stories about his path to success, crediting his talent, his instincts, his refusal to give up, never once mentioning the anonymous lifeline that had actually kept the entire operation afloat during its darkest year. I sat through those stories quietly, year after year, feeling a strange mixture of pride and invisibility, watching my brother build a triumphant narrative around himself, while the actual foundation of that triumph remained completely hidden, buried inside a holding company nobody in my family even knew existed. Then, 3 weeks ago, Dylan called me in a panic. His planned second location had fallen through after a business partner backed out unexpectedly, leaving him personally liable for a lease he could no longer afford, along with mounting debt from the expansion he'd already begun. He was, once again, on the verge of losing everything, and this time he'd come to me directly, not for money, but for advice, since I was, in his words, good with numbers. I sat with him at his kitchen table, carefully reviewing his finances, gently suggesting he consider restructuring his debt before it spiraled further out of control, perhaps delaying the second location until Bellafiore's core business stabilized again. Dylan's expression hardened as I spoke, and that's when everything I'd quietly carried for 4 years finally came pouring out into the open. "You've never built anything in your life, Claire," Dylan snapped, pushing back from the table. "This restaurant is everything I have. I built this from absolutely nothing, with my own 2 hands, my own vision, and you want to sit here and lecture me about business? You don't understand what it takes to actually create something. You just move numbers around all day for other people's money." I sat there for a long moment, absorbing his words, feeling something inside me finally shift after 4 years of careful, quiet silence. "Dylan," I said slowly, "do you actually know how Bellafiore survived that flood 4 years ago? The one that nearly closed you down before you'd even built a real following?" He paused, confused by the sudden change in direction. Some investor believed in the concept, recognized potential. Why does that matter right now? I pulled out my laptop, opened a folder I'd kept carefully organized for exactly this moment, though I genuinely never expected to need it, and turned the screen toward him. That investor was me, Dylan, Meridian Holdings, the company that wired $200,000 into your account 4 years ago. That's a shell company I set up through my firm. I funded the entire repair, covered your outstanding debts, and gave you the breathing room that actually kept Bellafiore alive. The color drained slowly from Dylan's face as he stared at the documents on the screen, his own restaurant's financial records, alongside wire transfer confirmations, bearing my name buried within the holding company's paperwork. "That's not possible," he whispered. "You never said anything. All these years, every story I told about surviving that flood on my own, and you let me believe that?" I let you believe what you needed to believe, I said quietly, because I knew if I told you the truth back then, your pride wouldn't have let you accept the help at all, and Bellafiore would have closed anyway. I didn't do it for credit, Dylan. I did it because you're my brother, and I couldn't watch everything you'd built disappear. Dylan sat back down slowly, running his hands through his hair, clearly struggling to reconcile 4 years of carefully constructed self-mythology with the truth now laid bare in front of him. So when you sat here tonight, he said finally, telling me to slow down, to restructure the debt, you weren't just some sister who doesn't understand business. You've been the actual foundation of this entire restaurant this whole time. I've always understood more than anyone in this family gave me credit for, I said gently. I never needed you to know that. I just needed you to actually listen to me tonight. Not because I'm your investor, but because I love you, and I'm genuinely worried about what happens if you take on this second lease without a stronger plan in place. In the months that followed, Dylan restructured his debt exactly as I'd suggested, delayed the second location, and slowly stabilized Bellafiore's finances. Our relationship shifted in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. He started actually asking about my work, genuinely curious for the first time in his life about the career he'd spent years politely ignoring. I never revealed the truth to the rest of my family, and Dylan, respecting the privacy I'd maintained for so long, kept that secret between the two of us. But something had changed permanently between my brother and me. A quiet, deeper understanding that had nothing to do with money at all, and everything to do with finally being truly seen by someone I loved. If this story touched you even a little today, I would be so grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to this small channel of ours. It genuinely means the world to us, and there are so many more stories just like Claire's still waiting to be shared with you. If you have a moment, please tell me in the comments, has someone in your life ever underestimated what you were truly capable of? I would love to hear your story too. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you very soon in the next story.